Hey everybody, my name is Tazariah Wolffe, and I'm here to help you navigate the entertainment industry along with my dear friend Elliott Graber. We're about to take you on another adventure of the Artist Journey podcast.
Let's see if this is going. Check, 1, 2, 2. Testing. All right, we are back in the studio. Welcome back. Edition 2 of episode 2 of this
Part 2
of this crazy interview with what did I call you before? Tazariah Wolffe?
Yeah, there's no Y on it.
It's Tazariah Wolffe. I should know this. He's one of my good friends. So I think I had a John Travolta moment where I was like, Adele Dazeem.
Hey,
I just get nervous for the camera.
Hey, if you're handing out Oscars, I'll take one.
Yeah. Sure. I got a few in the cabinet. I just tossed in there.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here because this is what we're talking about tonight. It's, to me, the coolest part of life. Yeah. And, I don't care what you subscribe to politically. I don't care what you subscribe to from a religious or faith-based perspective. They're all stories. Whether you're telling me stories about Allah or Buddha or Jesus or the Native American culture or the different Hindu gods, they're all stories.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's so much of what humanity is at its core.
Yeah.
Is just telling stories. And whether it's this, way back in the caveman days, it was, stories around the fire, and they were everything. You'd go out and you'd work to gather food or hunt food and protect each other and raise the kids and survive. And that was the end of that was the TV, and those were so much more than just a conversation. They were life lessons, and they were scientific explanations for that time. And that's who we are from a humanity perspective at our core. And is that bonding and that sharing. And so that's why I love talking about this stuff. Is that's all to me what TV is, or document. And I don't care personally. Yes, under certain circumstances it's more profound if it's based on a true story.
Yeah. Or
if it's fictional, or if it's I'm going to look at it differently if it's a documentary versus some scripted piece or some reality TV piece. And I've made my life about stories, so I know the differences really quickly. When I watch a story with my people, we love to most people, don't spoil it. We love to spoil it for each other. and the reason
Spoiler alert.
Well, exactly. It's like, yeah, tell me that. Because then I know the end, and I can enjoy watching how the story gets me there.
Yeah.
And that can be, at my stage of the game, so much more rewarding and exciting and fun. I totally get, and I don't spoil it for people if they don't want me to, but I actually like to get the ending in advance so I can see how the journey goes and just watch the twists and the turns from the actors or from the lighting or from the DP or all of it. So I'm not sitting there wondering, okay, what's going to happen next? I'm wondering, how are they going to get there? Ooh, I like what they did there. Oh, I didn't like what they did there. Just the other night, I watched Zodiac. And great movie. I don't know if you've seen it. But it was going to come off Netflix. And so I track what's going to come off and try to watch them all before they leave. And I'd never seen it. Super complicated movie. Lots of moving parts. And I was like, how are they going to do this in a short amount of time and, hold my attention? And Jake Gyllenhaal and Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Ruffalo, the way those three just embrace those characters with the backdrop of these crazy murders. I don't know if you know the story, but it's basically how an editorial cartoonist of the San Francisco Examiner became part of trying to solve these crazy serial murders. And I don't want to ruin it because I won't give
spoiler alert.
I'm not going to give you a spoiler, but it moves at a breakneck pace, and it's excruciatingly complicated, and yet it works.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know the ending, so I could figure out and learn from them how they got there, and that's kind of another little tidbit of my philosophy that I'll give out to the world because I think it'll help serve everybody. when I was a kid and started out, I had some great early teachers and a lot of great inspirational people in my life, like my dad, like I'd mentioned, and other people. But I didn't have a solid mentor because I was moving around too much and doing too many things. Yeah. So I wasn't stagnant enough to sit at the feet of a particular mentor. So I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. And one of the things, so a lot of these tidbits I'm throwing out are just the things that I've accrued over the years. And one of the things I've learned is that there are 3 steps to success. And I really don't care if you're learning how to play baseball or write a newspaper article or do brain surgery or be a storyteller. These are kind of universal things. You have to study and practice whatever it is you want to do in a non-performance kind of way. We'll pick baseball because that's nice and Americana and generic. So you gotta learn the game and you gotta practice the game, and then you gotta play the game. And a lot of people think, okay, that's all there is to it. But there's a 3rd step, and that's watching and studying the masters of the game. You know, for a short time, after I had been a stage actor and before I really got into producing, I was a newspaper reporter. My major in college was journalism, and a really good editor. I was a very hungry reporter. I was out to prove that I could do this, and I was writing multiple stories a day. Some reporters weren't even doing like 1 story a day, you know, and that's okay, you know, but I was doing 2 or 3. Yeah. And I just wanted to be super aggressive and super good at it. I was super young and super hungry. And this really great editor pulled me aside and he said, and he threw down, I'll never forget it, he threw down the New Yorker magazine on my desk. And I said, you know, and this was in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the time. And I'm like, what do you want me to do that? He said, I want you to read it. And he goes, I want you to go out and buy a subscription and read it. And I want you to also go out and buy a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. And I want you to read it. I'm like, why? They're not going to give me any stories for here in Albuquerque. He said, you're right. But their writing is so good. And yours isn't yet. You know, you've got to study the masters, and that'll make your writing better. Yeah. And, you know, and if you're watching baseball, I mean, if you're practicing baseball and you understand baseball in a learning dynamic, and then you go play the game, sure, you could be good. You could be great. But if you want to get there faster, watch the way the best players play. You know, read. If you want to be a writer, who are you reading? Read the great writers. Yeah. And not necessarily the commercially successful ones, but the really high quality ones. Yeah. Let yourself be influenced by the masters. You know, and so I still study storytellers. I still listen to storytellers. You know, podcasts where they're just telling stories. And there's a lot of bad ones, but there's some good ones. You know, and I constantly am still learning about filmmaking. For example, there's a podcast called Team Deacons, and it's by Roger Deakins. And
it's fantastic. I love that.
If anybody ever wants to get in the film business, you have to listen to every one of those podcasts. Roger Deakins is just...
Him and his wife too, right?
Yeah,
they're just fantastic.
Just geniuses beyond geniuses, and they've done everything you can imagine. You know, from animation, they did WALL-E, they did, you know, I mean, 1917. Just the whole gamut. And every podcast, I sit there and I listen to it with a notebook. You know, and because he'll mention a movie or a project that I saw 20 years ago when I wasn't thinking about making that kind of film. I was just enjoying the story. But then he starts telling a story on how, as a director of photography, he lit a certain scene a certain way, and it freaked everyone else out in the room because it didn't make any sense, but it made the movie. And he's so humble and unassuming about it, and so believable, and so and connectable, relatable. So I'm like, I have to see that movie and that scene through his eyes. And now that I know that backstory, because it just makes me a stronger storyteller, right? You know, so. There's an artist inside all of us. If you want to learn the steps to have that artist come out, check out The Artist's Journey. get the inside track of what it's really like and how to make the artist inside of you come on out. Now may be the best time ever to be in the entertainment business, because in the new entertainment industry, the artist is finally the one in charge. This podcast is designed to keep you up to date with the changes in the business and to give you the mindset, tools, and resources that you need to succeed. Check out The Artist's Journey with your host, Elliott Graber.
That kid should have been sold to a, what was it, concentration camp?
Start over.
No, it's the gypsies.
Talking about selling someone to the gypsies.
Sold that kid to the gypsies. Hello, welcome back. My name is Elliott Graber, and this is my podcast. And
my name is Tazariah Wolffe, and I'm his friend. Oh my goodness gracious!
It's been a night already, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you get talking about stuff that you love and believe in, and it's time goes by when you're having fun.
That's true.
I was thinking about, we were talking about the power of stories and whatnot, and people often forget that the real power is in the communication cycle. And really, what is a story but just the experience of the communication cycle? Everybody likes to believe that the power is in the person talking in the communication cycle, but the absolute opposite is true. The power is in the listening. If you're telling me a story, like you're talking to me, and while you're talking to me, I'm looking out the window, and I'm ignoring you, or I'm interested in my phone, whatever.
Like,
it's so much harder to communicate.
Yeah.
Because I've got the power, because I'm listening. And the audience is everything. It's so much more important than the storyteller. It's so much, stand-up comedy. If the audience doesn't laugh, it sucks.
Yeah.
If the audience laughs, it's hilarious. And because they have all the power, and the power is in the listening. So that's who we're serving. I want to give you the power to enjoy what I'm offering you. And if I do it right, if we as a collective create it right, then you're going to give me the gift of listening to my story. And then the communication cycle is complete. Again, I don't want to get in any sort of position politically or religiously, but in the traditional biblical sense, the Bible says that God, I just love this image, God spoke the world into existence. Well, if he's God, he could have done it any way he wanted to. He could blink it into existence, he could snap it, he could wiggle his pinky finger,
he'd shimmy it.
He could make some dirt and then blow into the dirt.
He could twerk it.
He could twerk it. He could have twerked the world into existence. He's God.
Wouldn't that just be in it? They all that feud in the
Exactly. He could twerk us into existence. He could flick us into. But he didn't. According to the Bible, he spoke us into existence. And there is that whole era with Oprah and the whole what was that? The Believe It and See It. Oh, The Secret. Remember The Secret?
Yeah.
That was that big movement. It's like speak it into existence for yourself. And I don't go too far into the spiritual elements or the new age element of it, but there is power in what you say. But the power isn't just the words. The power is in receiving them. And that's what we're talking about here. That's why I was saying earlier, there's a difference between a piece of art hanging on the wall as a piece of art versus a piece of art that's shared and accepted, even if it's recorded. There's an interaction, there's an effort that is just creates a different dynamic.
Yeah. And it's interesting too now because you and I both are men of the theater and then also of the film world as well. I think it's interesting. I just watched Hamilton the other night. And
good time.
Oh, it's so great. I mean, I love Lin-Manuel and I love his work and I saw his first show on Broadway actually in the Heights. And I had a chance to meet him after the show, and that was before he was a big sensation with Hamilton. Nicest guy, by the way. And also, I'm so impressed with him because of how he stands up for, I'm part Puerto Rican, and how he was there to help when the hurricanes hit, he was big on like getting funds over there to help. But anyway, when I was watching Hamilton the other night, I started realizing that now we're kind of at this place because people can't always afford to go out to the theater, and we're all stuck in the pandemic and at our homes. How brilliant it is to mix mediums, and I think we're going to see more of this with the theatrics coming to film and merging those two mediums. I think it's brilliant. Personally, it's what I aspire to do too. It's like, if you can, why not mix, classical musical theater with modern day film?
Absolutely. Storytelling has evolved, and it's going to continue to evolve. I'm watching students today learn how to write pieces, live theater type pieces that are done 100% on Zoom. And because that's what their circumstances demand. And I've seen two of them sucked. They were terrible. But you know what? I have so much respect for them because they're stepping to the plate swinging. And they're getting across the finish line. And you know what? The third one was really good. And I was very impressed by it.
Yeah.
And it's seeing that grow. And I think that if you get caught up in your traditions, and yes, I love going to the theater. I will always be a Shakespeare whore.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I love those traditions.
Yeah.
But I'm not so old school, and I hope I never become so old school where I can't embrace the newest, greatest thing. And that's the other thing. Once upon a time, okay, so again, here I go dating myself.
I love it.
But I worked on The Bachelor. I worked on the first...
And you never called me!
Yeah, well, we hadn't met yet.
Damn it!
And when I was doing it, you're probably jailbait, so we didn't bring it on the show.
Let's... Elliott's 17. We probably can't get him in here yet. But
exactly. And he ain't that successful, and we got like pilots and, business moguls and whatever. Yeah.
But he's in his prime. Let's just get him in there.
Exactly. And we would rent these edit bays, these suites, where we were in this office complex, and there'd be all these little side offices, and we would rent these behemoth editing computers and these edit suites, and we couldn't buy them. They were filthy expensive.
Yeah. And
there was a couch in every room, and you would sit in there as the producer who'd been on set for the different locations and the material, and you'd work with the editors all day long, and then and it was a very organized. The production teams were phenomenal. I've been so fortunate. I've worked with so many brilliant, well organized geniuses in my life. But they had it down to the dime and down to the science. They knew exactly when, at first when we gear up toward an episode, there'd be one edit suite, and then there'd be two, and then 3 and 4 and 5, and then there'd be, I think it topped out at like 9. And then there'd be 9 full edit suites running, building episodes, and it was all scheduled out by our post-production lead producer and whatnot, and then it'd go to 8 as the episode wind down, and then the next episode would wind up, and they knew exactly when to. But I mean, each one of these rooms was like $100,000 to get these suites, or I could be misquoting the price, but a lot of money and a lot of equipment. And now, it's 4 editors and a laptop and some hard drive and some memory towers. I mean, it's so accessible now. Just not what it was like, when I was a kid, but I'm talking about what it was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah. You can do it all right here. So, people say, how do I do it? Just go do it. Go get something across the finish line. Mess with it. Watch a zillion YouTube channels on how to edit something. Download software. The software is actually, it's easier for a college student to get started than somebody not in college, because you get college discounts on Adobe, and you get, college discounts on your Apples, and, and all of these, it's actually much cheaper to get to the highest level of software, and then it's just practice.
Yeah.
Get your hands on a camera, get some good friends, come up with a good idea, and execute it and go shoot it. And if it's garbage, just stick it in your pocket. I mean, who directed E.T.?
Steven
Spielberg.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, Spielberg is what I was saying. He kept his old home movies from when he shot with his little brother, or maybe he was his older brother. They're close in age.
Yeah.
And they no sound, and they would shoot they play army movies in the backyard. And he would run around the backyard, and he would when his brother was shooting a gun, he'd step on a stick that was kind of partially buried in the ground, so it'd puff up, so it looked like a gunshot, and he just messed with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where he started.
Huh.
When he was 8, 10, 12 years old. Mm-hmm. There's a kid right now out there who's messing with an Apple, who is fiddling around with a camera, who's figuring out the software, who's figuring out how to do his own editing. He's going to be the next Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And I don't know, hopefully that person, whether he's 10 or whether he's 18 or whether he's 25, and it's never too late to start either, whether he's 40 or 50 or whatever. They're hearing the sound of this, and, they would take it from me. All you got to do is commit and go all the way in and finish it. Mm-hmm. And then you're in the game.
Yeah.
And more power to you. I work with some guys now, where they can make a movie on $3,000 or less, and and we can spend a whole 3 hours talking about budgets, but I saw something on the internet the other day, the top 25 movies quality-wise, the best 25 movies that were made for $15,000 or less. Mm. And every one of those movies I'd either seen or want to see. In there, Paranormal Activity was one of them. That movie's nothing short of terrifying.
That is terrifying. I watched that this Halloween.
$10,000.
Terrifying. See, so here's a question. So what separates those movies? Because I mean, those movies could have had, if given, investors, tens of thousands of dollars to work with, but instead they had 10,000.
Right.
So what is it about those movies that, with a very minimal, ultra low budget film, can still compete with those really high end projects?
That's a good question. It's a complicated question. It's kind of a complicated answer, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the 5 stages of production. Mm-hmm. They did development, and they did development well. Mm-hmm. And they executed it. They knew what their story was going to be. Mm-hmm. And they didn't overwrite their story, so they're overwriting their budget. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so they executed the development perfectly and said, let's come up with a solid, amazing story that's truly terrifying, and let's do it in a way that's truly affordable and make it intense to this specific and particular genre. One of the reasons that horror films are so prevalent and successful is because they're kind of cheap to make.
Very.
And so you can do a lot of really cool, crazy things for very little money, and we want the emotion, we want the excitement, we want the passion. Well, when you can't get that passion on a low budget with a car crash or a famous actor who we've already identified with, and we know what they're thinking because we've seen Brad Pitt kiss a million women, or Julia Roberts laugh her way through, and you hear her laugh, and it makes your heart smile. It takes you to a fun, awesome place, and all that work's already put in.
Yeah,
all the money's already been spent. Mm-hmm. So you can't get that on a low budget. Mm-hmm. So you have to get in it more quickly, and an easy way to do that is a horror. Plus, let's face it, sometimes it's hard to find good acting. Yeah, and it's easy to act in a horror movie.
That's right. Scary movie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Exactly. I was in. Let's back up the train. I was in a couple horror movies myself.
Were you really?
Yes. I was a zombie. For those of you who are listening, I was a zombie in a movie called, one of the very worst movies in the history of mankind, called Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town.
Oh wow! Yeah. Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town.
And if you pay really close attention, and you can find a picture of me when I looked young. I actually died multiple times because the budget was so low, and they kept using the same group of zombies over and over and over again. So I actually died 4 times in that movie as a zombie. I was in
awesome.
a much higher budgeted horror movie directed by John Carpenter called Ghosts of Mars. And I wasn't supposed to be an actor in it. I was doing something else in production, and they needed more zombies. And quite frankly, I wanted to in that one because it was just so much fun, and it's John Carpenter. And GNK, Greg Nicotero, is one of the guys who's the executive producer. He's a genius, man, and he's a good man. And my heart goes out to him. I'd do anything for that guy. He'd call me up and talk to him in 20 years. And he'd call me up and ask me for a favor today, and I'd just do it without even thinking because he's such a good guy. He went on to do the Walking Dead. He's one of the producers of that. And so he was on Ghosts of Mars, and he actually, when that ended, I needed another job. He gave me a job in his studio for like 8 weeks when I was getting resettled in LA, and we were making rubber dead dinosaurs for a David Duchovny film called Evolution.
Yeah. And
I needed a job really bad, and he gave it to me. So, my heart will always go out to Greg Nicotero. But yeah, my point is that I got to spend some time with some of these greats and some of these heavy hitters, and again, I've already name dropped too much. But what they do versus what I do now, same thing. The process is the same. It's just different tools and different levels of expertise. Horror is a great place to start, where I think a lot of new filmmakers, young filmmakers, miss the mark, is comedy. I think that comedy is easier to begin with than just as easy as horror, in my opinion, and a lot more fun. And if you're like, yeah, but I'm not funny, well then, like I said earlier, watch funny. Watch a bunch of funny movies and ask yourself, why is that funny? There's nothing wrong with a well-placed fart joke.
Yeah.
If it's a comedy.
That's true. That's right.
We haven't had a joke in this movie for a while. Let's do it.
Just random fart joke.
Go hang out in a.
I think they did that in Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. The dog farts and and that was one of the best moments ever because it was so he was talking to a girl, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden the dog farts and he looks at him just like.
Exactly.
It's like, come on, I'm in the middle of this thing.
Well, and it was the idea that he's always messing with the dog doing scientific experiments.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was hilarious, and so I feel, to me, it's like the horror comedy is a good place to start. And then you can work towards drama, and then you can work toward action as your career goes.
Yeah.
But,
I could see that. And there's a few actors that come to mind that started in comedy and then like Adam Sandler did a ton of comedy and then he started doing dramatic stuff. Even Jim Carrey.
Oh, right.
Probably Cameron Diaz, but I don't know if she does it well.
Yeah. Well, no, I think she's pretty hilarious.
She's hilarious. She's fantastic. But she's also done movies like The Holiday, where it's also heartfelt.
Right.
And there are elements of drama in there.
Right.
Who actually is really Kate Winslet. Can be funny, but also super dramatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate her work as well. So.
Absolutely, and again, that's why I dabbled in stand up, and I still do when I can. I don't do stand up under my real name, and the reason that is because I want to have the freedom to go wherever the audience and I want to go, and I don't want my friend Elliott in the audience because maybe, just maybe. In that moment, I end up making fun of actors, and
I'll take it so personally,
the woman I'm dating or my children or whatever. And I don't want someone to come and say, "Oh, it's Tazariah. I know that guy." Well, that's the last person I want in my audience because I'm doing it just to have the freedom of not worrying about the social relationship,
right? But
just explore funny.
Well, just to pay tribute to the craft itself and not have to feel obligated. I think that's fantastic you say that because I think often artists or people that are artistic or in the entertainment world want to express fully, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't feel like they can because of judgment.
Yeah, and it's a little different. I struggle with that a little bit as a director because you have the script to hide behind.
That's true.
You know,
That is true.
and if anybody like, it's easy, and this is like an ivory tower looking down my nose kind of a statement. But you know, if anybody were to judge an actor because in their past they played an axe murderer, and because they played an axe murderer, they're not going to put them in their next car commercial. Well, screw you! I don't want to be in your car commercial. If you're so shallow that you see me as an axe murderer, you know, that then you don't understand acting, and a 4-year-old can understand pretend. You know,
Right.
and because I was really good at my job, you're going to punish me by not let me do what I do for you to make you money.
Yeah.
You're a very short-sighted individual.
Right.
So I'm okay with that. You know, and as an actor, you know, and it's, again, sometimes I can be hard on actors because I'm a director, at least offset conversationally. When I'm on set, I work very hard to collaborate with them, but I like to give them a hard time, you know.
Like tell me who do you...
Well, it's
who do
more
you
just the philosophy of stupid actor, kind of a roll your eye thing. You're just the paintbrush, I'm the painter kind of a thing. But, you know, it couldn't be done without them.
Yeah.
You know, and a good actor is just crucial to me. They're worth their weight in gold. And I know so many great actors just in this community, you know, not name dropping, not famous people, you know, and I've known a lot of them, they're just, who are super famous out in LA, are just super obnoxious, and I want no part of. And they're, you know, because so I guess my point is that a good actor isn't just a talented actor.
Yeah.
It's a good human being,
Right.
who wants to work together and collaborate. And it's not all about them. It's not all about their image. And while I respect people who are like, hey, that's all well pie in the sky for you, Mr. Tazariah Wolffe, but I've got a mortgage to pay, and I've got, you know, a family to take care of in Southern California, and it's filthy expensive, and I have to worry about those things. I don't have the luxury of just being able to do it for art's sake. And I understand that, and I respect that. But at the same time, when you can do that for the right reasons, and it's pure and sincere, I think you can still transcend the image factor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much so. No, that's I think also in order to do the work, you have to sort of set your ego aside in any position, because I mean that's part of being a professional.
Right.
You know, it's like you have to go into any situation with many circumstances that could happen, many outcomes, but if you don't prepare, right? If you don't go through the 5 stages of development in your own process as an artist, you're doing a disservice to everyone else.
Right. And people say you can over-prepare. I don't necessarily agree with that, because you only over-prepare if you don't know how to leave some of the work at home. You know, this is the same is true for acting. I want to see my actors go too far, and then I can pull them back, versus me trying to push them to get there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now, in the Twin Cities, for example, where we are now, there's a lot of really amazing theater. I forget the numbers, but there's like, 64 professional. Well, this is pre-pandemic, but there were 64 professional theater companies in this town. People getting paid for it, and then there's another, 80 some that are nonprofit. There's a lot of really great theater in this town.
Especially nonprofit. I think total from last I remember was about around 300 companies.
Right, and I don't know how many are like, for-profit paid versus nonprofit. But the point is that I come across a lot of theater actors.
Yes, very much so.
And the first thing I need to do is pull them back and make them small and talk about the subtleties of interaction and reaction, because Grandma on the Last Row is not on my set.
Right.
And I don't want to blow out my mic and, the body movements and the big gestures and all that. I'm like, yeah, it's great. And you're such a great actress. It's not that they're bad, but it's just, I don't want to see that on film.
It's a different medium.
100%.
You know, it's and to me, film feels like, because I'm a theater kid at heart. I mean, I started in the theater, and I'm grateful that I had that experience because I think it set me up for film. That being said, it took me a long time to get to the point where and even today, I still have to tell myself, pull it back, because I'm, you know me, I'm very expressive. I use gestures, and I am ADD, so I just have
I've told you to pull it back many times.
Just pull it back. That's what she said.
Exactly. Pull it back. That's what she said.
God damn.
Exactly. You know, and that's okay because you know it's go to some other part of the country and you got to pushing them to get there, pushing them to get there. Yeah. Both in theater and on film. Yeah. You know, so again, that's the challenge of the director. But if you can get them into and in that situation where I go is observe. Mm-hmm. Now I keep saying it about actors. Observe I'll tell an actor, okay, you did good work today, and that's another thing I want to mention, the power of rehearsal. Mm-hmm. I don't think enough film projects rehearse.
I would agree with that.
And because I can rehearse with somebody and I can tell them, okay, this is rehearsal, we're going to rehearse again tomorrow. I want you to go home and I want you to watch your mom and dad over a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And they're communicating, and I promise you they're communicating very well. And they're probably, if they've been married for a number of years, they're communicating with their words, but they're also giving each other tons of nonverbal cues. They're saying things without having to say things, with their body, with the way they breathe, with where they're looking around the room. There's all kinds of communication going on there, and barely a word is spoken, and barely a gesture has been made. And when I can get an actor to start observing how people communicate and act and react in a very real way, if they have that big theater actor talent and experience, but then they just start listening to conversations in the next booth over at the diner, or across the hall at the bookstore, or across the pew at church before service, or whatever it is, and they start really looking and observing about the way it works, we can very easily get them from big actor, big show, everybody needs to see me say my line in the back row and hear me, down to that interactive place. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the route, in my experience, to get them there.
Yeah. Interesting. I think it's so important that we talk about things like this because these are things that, in training and along the years, like working actually in the industry itself, that you kind of develop and learn as you go. But I think oftentimes people feel like they can't, talk about these things or understand exactly how to begin with. But I love the fact that you're saying just apply it to your everyday life, because that's so important. It is to understand like the nonverbal communication. Actually, you can do an entire scene with another actor. I've seen it done where they're not saying a word.
Right.
And you know exactly like what you're saying, that what we're doing right now. It's like we are speaking words, but we also are connecting non-verbally. And I think that's the more in touch you can be like that. That's pretty fantastic.
I'm going to brutalize these statistics, but I think it's like 15% of communication is words.
Yeah.
It's some minuscule percentage.
Yeah.
The rest of it's nonverbal and environmental and dynamic from above and beyond the words. And, and so you got to respect that part of it and not just see the words of what they are, I mean, my goal is to share this kind of stuff. So, like, I think I live in a time where the tools at my disposal as a storyteller are so much better than they were, like I said earlier, just a short time ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm at a great time to do what I do. Mm. But my son, who wants to be a director, I want him to surpass me as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. It's not a fiefdom. It's not I'm not threatened by anything. I want the storytelling to get better and stronger and better and stronger. and recognize the universal truths that were true around the campfire, when we all lived in caves and huts and whatever. And those universal truths will always be there, but they just get more refined and more defined and more connected, because to me that's the big weapon of overcoming the uglier things in the world. Corporations or governments or whatever that are trying to sell you and spin you and manipulate you and whatnot. If you at your core have a strong sense of this connection, then they're going to have a harder time breaching that. And this core is going to be as strong as it can be, one person to another, with good storytelling.
Yeah.
So I almost sound like I'm on a crusade or something, but I feel like, and I think that society now with text messaging and sound bites and everything, it erodes good storytelling, and weakens it, and it weakens the communication process, and makes us more vulnerable to sound bites and manipulation, versus sitting down and really listening to another person. And you can listen to me without ever meeting me, because my story is in the form of a film or a documentary. I mean, we haven't even talked about documentaries, and some of the other things that are out there. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to how well you're telling the story.
Hearing you talk reminds me of two things that I want to ask you. The first one is when I was in college, we took a class when I had a professor who was fantastic, who said, I want you to say something, and I want you verbally say something, and non-verbally say another thing.
Okay.
Like, say, Taz, I love you. But then non-verbally say, Taz, I hate you. So it'd be like, Taz, I love you.
And I don't believe that at all.
Exactly. So that's the dynamic. I just had to chime in with that because I thought that that's exactly what great acting does.
Right.
It propels the...
it's on a commercial right now, and every time I see this commercial on, whether it's on a streaming device or whatever, I stop and watch it. Yeah. It's such a great commercial. It's John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. And it's
Snakes on a plane. No, it's not.
No. It's for a credit card, and John Travolta is all beard, kind of like me, but he's all white, and he's playing Santa Claus, and he's on a computer, and it's about some service that the credit card is providing. It'll give you a code for a coupon, whatever, silly, and he's doing his naughty and nice list on the computer. Yeah, and he's like, oh, okay, oh, have you heard about? And Mrs. Claus is sitting there, right? Yeah. And he's like, oh, have you heard about this new thing? And suddenly Samuel L. Jackson pops up, and John Travolta's like, Samuel, how's it going? And Samuel L. Jackson's like, hey, Santa, yeah, you should use this feature that Capital One credit card's using, or whatever it is. Yeah. And he goes, and at the end of the commercial he goes, hey, so Santa, does this get me on your off the naughty list? And John Travolta goes, are you still using those naughty words? And Samuel L. Jackson goes, yes. And he's nodding his head no. Yes. And I was like, that is so good. And it's the essence of what you're talking about. Yes. He's shaking his head no. He's like, and his eyes get all big, and he's like, yes. And every time I see it, I stop and watch it, because it is so classic of what's really going on there. And when, of course, Samuel Jackson and his excellent usage of four-letter words, and the relationship between Travolta and Samuel Jackson. Yeah. He's wearing a T-shirt. Samuel Jackson's wearing a T-shirt. It's a Merry Christmas on cheese, because that line from Pulp Fiction, and a cheese royale or whatever it is. Yeah. He's wearing a T-shirt that pays homage to that. It's one of the funniest commercials I've seen. So, but yeah, that whole, it's all about communication and observing and connecting and listening to the story.
Well, I just want to thank you for your time. You've been so gracious to come here and to be a part of this. Thank you for always being so supportive of me and my projects and all that. And I'm just so honored. I am going to just end with one last question. So going back to what you were saying with, wanting your son or wanting your generation down the line, what value would you place on them, or what would you like to leave with them to, from what you've learned through your experiences? What would you say to your son right now? Dad, I want to go and be a director in the entertainment world today. What would you say? Here's the best shot you got. I want, they have all the power. They have all the vision, they have all the future. I want to ride their coattails more than I want to ride, established coattails. And I would want to tell them, it's overwhelming and it's intimidating officially to start, and just don't be afraid. Throw yourself in the pool. I've never, when I started doing stand-up, I just decided I was going to do it. And I sucked at it at first. And I figured out what it took to make people laugh, and I have so much respect for good stand-ups. I'm an okay stand-up. I have good ones or great ones. I've never wrote a song before, and I'm working on a song with you now. And my point is that we, Country Stars, and hopefully it's going to go someplace fun. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but the process is awesome, and I think it's a great song. And the point that I'm making is I've learned that you just go do it. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to fail. You learn so much more. You learn everything by failing. You really don't learn that much when you succeed, because you already know how to do it. You just get the euphoric feeling of succeeding, whether it's with a film or with a project at your job or an athletic endeavor or whatever it is. Winning is awesome and everyone chases it, but you learn so much more when you fail. So don't be afraid to fail. People think that you have to be, in this day and age, and again, of the soundbite and the instant gratification, you either have to be perfect or don't bother. And nothing could be further from the truth. So just jump in the pool, and there's lifeguards around. And sometimes you're going to get a nose full of water, but you're going to swim, and you're going to, before you know it, you're going to be sailing. And the tools that are there are better than they ever been. And if you're going to get burned, and you're going to fail, and you're going to be so frustrated and angry, but just keep going, get it across the finish line, surround yourself by good people, and in no time at all, you're going to be surpassing me. And I can't wait for that day. And that's not just toward my son, but it's also to that whole generation. And right now, they get excited about things that I don't necessarily get excited about, that they're passionate about politically, or they're passionate about from a world perspective, but I don't care, because they're passionate, and they're learning as they go, and they're growing, and they're exploding, and that makes the differences. I don't have to agree with your story to like it, right? Yeah.
I just want to hear a good story. So tell me whatever your story is, and tell me why it's important to you, and I'll listen to you. And I may not agree with you, but that doesn't mean I don't want to hear it. Because I can leave my agenda and my ego at the door and just connect story to story. And that's the challenge I would leave for that generation, is not just jump in, but focus on the heart and the message, not to where you have to defend it, but just tell it and let people enjoy it for whatever it is. If you've got an agenda behind it, that's okay. Go for it. Because you'll learn over time how to transcend past the agenda to the importance of the connection. Because that is going to get whatever it is you're trying to accomplish done a lot more quickly than, you can't debate people into a position, but you can love them into it. You know, I wholly and fully subscribe to the idea that love will always win. Love will lose battles, but love will always win the war. And at the core of almost every story, that's there. So that's what I would encourage the next generation toward.
Wow. Tazariah Wolffe, my friends. There you go, the one and only. This has been fantastic. Thank you, my friend. I'm going to elbow bump you.
Elbow bump. Stay safe. Love on each other all you can. Respect each other. Special shout out to my 4 beautiful children. I'm a single dad, so I could never forgive myself if I didn't say hey to Nathaniel, Harper, Huxley, and Hewitt, my son and my 3 daughters. They're above and beyond this. They're what I live for, and I just couldn't forgive myself if I didn't at least. They'll probably listen to all this and make fun of me, but if they don't hear their names, I'd probably have to move out to my car. So,
this has been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much.
Honor's been on my. Thank you so much for having me. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to The Artist's Journey. My name is Tazariah Wolffe, and I have gotten the pleasure to sit in for this week's episode. The Artist's Journey is a collection of interviews that feature independent artists discussing their craft, navigating the entertainment industry, and reflecting on the value of the artists in our world today. If you like the podcast, subscribe and leave a comment. It would mean the world to Elliott. We thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.